It's Mary Beckman, and it is time for Metaphysical Meltdown. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. We're just a couple minutes late today, but so happy to see you. So I've got a few things to talk about very quickly before we bring on Fran Tatu. She is a remarkable person, and I can't wait for everyone to meet her. So there's a couple things I want to say because this week has been special to me because earlier we had on Mosey and Aaron, and today we have on Fran. We're just talking about some of the things that are going on out in the world. I just want to draw my line, which is what I was doing the other day. I'm just going to continue by saying I don't stand for anybody or anything that rapes this planet. I'm just going to start that. And I also want to say I don't stand for anybody who harms another person or an animal. So that's basically me. So we're going to go forward with that. We're lucky to have coming up, I'm not sure exactly when, we're very lucky to have Reverend Harriet come on, Harriet Walden, who's a local person. She has the radio show called Mother's Justice. I'm not sure when she's coming on, but we're going to be so excited to have her. She is somebody that I call a friend, and I think she's awesome. So we're going to have Reverend Harriet's voice coming on up. And then we're going to have Galactic Week, everybody. Oh my gosh, I can't tell you. You know how happy I am. And I'm not going to tell you who exactly it is because we have some people that are pretty awesome that are coming on. Some don't know they're coming on yet. I hope they're coming on. But I'll let you know when Galactic Week is up. Now, for next week, we have Robbie Holtz, who is talking about Aboriginal healing in her books. That's Monday. On Wednesday, we have Eileen Grimes talking about what the heck's going on with all those planets, retrogrades, and all that kind of stuff. It's actually better than you think because everything is getting unearthed and lies are coming to the surface. So we're excited to talk to Eileen. And then we have Dr. Corey Goodmanson coming on Thursday to talk about chiropractic and muscle testing and diet, natural things you can take. She's somebody who has caused some miracles, so I can't wait to hear from Dr. Corey. And then it's going to be solstice, so I have no idea what's going to happen after that. Kaboom! That week, hopefully coming up, is going to be Galactic Week. I'll let you know. So I'm not just a little excited about that. I'm a lot excited. So that's all I have to say. We're going to open up for Fran here, and I'm hoping people will ask her questions. I've got lots of questions. Higher Self just told me, let Fran run the show. So here she is. Thanks so much, Fran, for coming on.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thanks for tuning in. As Mary said, my name's Fran, and I'm eclectic in many ways, but today Mary has asked me to speak about activism. So I'm hoping people who are tuning in are interested in taking some of their prayer work, their prayerful work, and their hopeful intentions to the next level. Because really at this juncture, it's going to take all of us. And it's especially going to take people who are non-POC or non-people of color to become allies, and then to go the next level and to become accomplices. And of course, there's certain ways to do it. Right now, I'm really very much in a space of pulling in, sitting back and listening to my brown and black brothers and sisters to lead the way, to let me know how I can best be of service. Also, with the sheltering in place, I'm sort of in a little retrograde right here, sort of assessing. I think we're all doing that right now. We're doing the reset, we're reassessing, we're looking around. We've come from, this incredible shutdown of the economy and our social lives with COVID to now we're full on into Black Lives Matter. And really reckoning with, I feel, our planet's shadow, our karma of at least 500 years that we know of genocide and slavery of people that are of a different skin color and who are marginalized and who continue to be marginalized. So it's a reckoning, it's coming up for all of us. And if you're uncomfortable and if you're outraged, then you're right where you need to be. And I thank you for that.
Oh my gosh. And that's all I've been hearing from people. And that's all I've been feeling is sad, mad, just sad, I can't believe my eyes, actually. And then I talked to my friend like Eileen, for example, who says it's all right on schedule. Don't you worry. And then I go back into my faith, and I believe things are going to get better. We, of course, don't know how long it's going to take or what way it's going to happen. So we have to be in our faith, don't we? So what have you been doing just lately, though? Because you have one of the most interesting lives of anybody I know.
Oh.
So what have you been doing?
Well, thanks, Mary. Just to go from ground zero, and then maybe I can move out and backwards a little bit. We've been dealing with out and right police brutality here in Austin, Texas. Just really shocking. And it's ripped the lid off of how people have viewed Austin for many years. Except that those of us in the trenches who've been doing social justice work are not actually surprised. April 24th, a Black Hispanic man, Michael Ramos, was shot dead by the Austin Police Department for no reason other than being the skin color he was. He was in a car working on his girlfriend's car. There was a random call that people were doing drugs in the same parking lot. Police showed up, came on very heavily with him. He knew that if he were to comply, he might end up dead, so he did not. And with his hands up, they shot him. He jumped in his car because he was in shock, pushed his girlfriend out of the car, and then took off. And they emptied their guns into the back of his car, killing him. So April 24th, we've been reeling with local coalitions calling for police accountability, calling for actually the firing of the police chief Manley. And then on the heels of that, George Floyd came up. And I'll just say personally, I've seen quite a bit in my time. And for some reason, when I watched that video, I was horrified by the look on the policeman's face. So I actually called a number that I was able to track down and spoke to some police in Minneapolis that same day. And I could tell they were taking it very seriously. But I was just, from the moment of George Floyd, I was just really called to take action. And this is one of the things I wanted to talk about today, that if you're feeling helpless, if you're feeling despair, taking action is a great antidote. I heard a quote today, and I don't have it perfectly, but it was by Toni Morrison. And she said in the quote, "If you're free, then help someone else be free. And if you're in a position of power, or it was, if you have power, then use it. Use it for the good." So this is something that guides me. What is the highest good for all? And certainly having a socially just society is the highest good for all. And I think it's what we all are being called to strive for now. So I've been working with different groups on exposing the violence right here in my town where I'm living, and speaking up with city council about defunding the police, because I do support that. And defunding the police, by the way, there's a lot of misinformation out there. It is about taking funds that are being used for weapons that are then turned around and used against us, and putting them more into mental health, social justice programs, housing, these kinds of things, social programs, which actually make us safer.
Okay, yes, that was where I was going with one of my questions, because I think when people hear that word defund, they think it means no more police. That's not. Good grief. There's so many words that become like buzzwords that people use. One of the things that Mosey and Aaron were saying the other day that helped me to understand, I sort of understood this, but boy, what they were talking about was having a peaceful protest. And then suddenly it turned different. The feeling and the spell that was over the crowd right before somebody pushed their car in and hit somebody, hit a person. Okay. It was like a spell they were under. What do you think about that? Could you explain what the Black Lives Movement is about?
About Black Lives Matter?
Sorry, I'm trying to concentrate here and channel at the same time.
I'm not the best spokesperson for that. You know, I'm of Asian heritage and I'm a woman of color, but I would really love, especially now, Mary, I'm very much in the mind frame that what we need most is to amplify the voices of Black women. Really are at the forefront of this, and they have been since the beginning of civil rights. So if you can tune in and listen to certain women. And there's so many women now speaking out.
Yes.
Angela Davis is one, you know, she's the one who's saying completely, well, she's saying some really amazing things, actually. Nina Turner is another one. There are so many Black voices that need to be heard now. Cordell West is another one. In my town, Chaz Moore is leading Austin Justice Coalition. He's amazing. So
Can
I
I ask
encourage everyone to tune in.
the
Tune into your leaders in your
question I was getting to in such a clunky manner is
yes, go ahead.
what is above all this? Because what Mosey and Aaron were saying is that they were having a peaceful protest. It changed instantly when it was like a spell came over them. Can you say anything about that?
Well, I wasn't there, so I'm not sure what to say about that. I can say that I've been in many crowds and many protests. And I think it's good, really good, wise to practice peripheral vision and to stay aware of, yes, the mood of the crowd. There's no telling what might have triggered that, though, Mary.
Well,
they're certainly provocateurs.
Is I've seen that myself in big crowds, and I'm going to go back. The other side of me is all about rock and roll, right? And I remember watching a particular band, and this band is so loved and so well known. And one of their awesome songs was coming on, and everybody was just absolutely spellbound. I was, of course, leaving, had to go to the bathroom, crucial moment there. I could see people crying because the words meant so much to them, and they were completely focused on this group. So it's Pink Floyd, it's the group, and Roger Waters was the person that I was watching. So it can happen in a good way. But what I was thinking they were talking about was just to be watching what it is we're saying and watching how we're feeling in these types of situations. That's all I was going for. So you go say what you need to, and I'm going to be quiet.
Certainly, no, I'm just saying, and also, especially if you're an empath, it behooves you to do whatever it is that you do to protect yourself from all kinds of energies flying around, of course. As far as a spell, I just don't, I can't, you know, that hasn't happened to me in large crowds.
Okay.
Being out there. There is a collective consciousness. It does depend on who, it's always trickled down. It does depend on who's organizing. When it's the people, it's quite something. I went to March for Our Lives with the teens, you know, from Parkland, and that was an amazing. It was an amazing mood of that many people to be together, all standing for the same thing.
Yes,
you know, that was amazing. And one of my prayers that I always say before an action or before a group is a Sanskrit prayer, which takes me back to my roots that I wanted to mention. With a Balinese teacher who was a student of Gandhi, who, as we know, was one of the leaders with nonviolent civil disobedience. And this is one of the things that I very much believe can affect a change, is nonviolent civil disobedience. We have our rights to do this. Yes. We have a right to inconvenience other people if we feel that disrupting business as usual is what it's going to take. And that's actually why people are out in the streets right now. So Ibu Gadong taught me the Sanskrit prayer, which is Sama Niwaha Koti, Sama Naradaya Niwaha, Sama Namastu Mano, Yato wa Susaha Sati Om Shanti Shanti Shanti, which is to be of the same mind, to be of the same heart, to share intention. And this is really the key to all of our work that we're all doing, to share intention. This is the basis for all community. These were in the books of the Rig Vedas, and Gandhi used many of the teachings from there and this particular mantra to form communities in India when he was standing up to the British. So it's good to know your people. It's good to know what you're doing, to be clear where you're going. I knew people who were in a small camp at Standing Rock, so I knew people there. And I was on my way to see my kids after I had finished work in the Pacific Northwest, so I stopped in and I ended up staying two months there and really got to know the people on the ground. Some of the most amazing community I've been in, and I learned many lessons there. Maybe we should open up to see if there are questions from people about some of the ways that people can be active.
Yeah, I have questions. There isn't any questions yet, but if anybody has a question, please to ask Fran. So that is actually where I met you, is when you were at Standing Rock.
Okay.
I didn't talk to you, but I met somehow or another. I found you on Facebook, and that's when I started watching you. Was when you were there at Standing Rock. So can you tell me some of those lessons that you learned?
Well, one of the lessons I learned was to, of course, be extremely conscious of the history of the indigenous people on this continent, and to know that there are upwards of, they're saying 500 million lives were lost when genocide was affected. And oftentimes now, when we are speaking about Black lives, we also need to remember the indigenous, because they are actually arrested and killed at a higher rate, at the highest rate in this country, which makes sense if you go back. And I think their history is very much linked to the struggle of the Black lives. And the two have worked side by side, as I've seen in many instances. So I learned about more deeply about the history of the indigenous. I learned about missing and murdered indigenous women in the man camps, which I hadn't heard about. When pipelines are being built, they bring in workers from outside the community and set up these man camps. And then women start going missing. And that's the first lesson I learned when I arrived, was an Akachita, a woman warrior, their scouts. He came and talked to me because I'm a late night owl, and she said, I want you to be careful if you're out at night alone, and if someone stops you on the road, especially even if they're in a police uniform, don't get out of the car, roll down your window just a little bit, but don't get out of the car because women go missing here. So that startled me, and I did take care, but mainly I stayed at the camp. I learned about the power of prayer, which I was happy about, because so many young activists that I know, prayer and, let's say, religion is very much a dirty word. But with Standing Rock, I felt that we went back to the roots of just honoring simple prayer, honoring our ancestors. And, we were there for a long time, and there was a lot of brutality that went on. And I attribute it to the power of prayer and our elders that led us, that we lost no one. People were maimed. A good friend of mine lost her eye, Susie Desba, an amazing woman whose fundraiser she's doing for the Navajo we'll put up later at the end of this thing. So people were hurt. Sophia lost an arm, but we didn't have any deaths there. And I strongly believe it was because of prayer that we were led in that in the morning, and we had a central fire. We had the sacred fire. So everything was done according to the indigenous ways and fire, and we learned respect. People were taught respect and humility. Mm-hmm. Because it really is time for us to sit back and take a back seat and listen to the voices of people of color to lead us and teach us now.
Absolutely. So something happened not too long ago. And I'm so sorry. I have a memory issue. I should have written this down. I was focused on a different part of this interview, but something just happened at Standing Rock. What was it?
You mean that the judge ruled in favor of the Cheyenne? Yes. They ruled in favor of the Cheyenne River Sioux. Mm-hmm. So there was a battle won legally, and of course it's still in the courts. But they ruled in favor of all the people that were there. So it was quite amazing. And even though at the end of the day, we weren't protected by Obama, we were certainly not protected by Trump. And they pushed through with the pipeline, and there have been leaks since then. What was created was this amazing network of people who would show up and stand up, put the bodies on the line, show up and be really good allies, as well as protecting their own indigenous land.
So I remember a few years back when some of this stuff started. It's been going on forever, but I remember a particular day. I'm not going to what day it is, everybody. And my girlfriend called me that morning, and she said, "Do not panic." And instantly in my brain, I heard the people will come together. Oh, so beautiful. We have seen that is actually happening. And I have to tell you, I'm not on either side. I am not on either side right now. I'm disgusted with both. And so I want things to get a lot better. You know, I'm not necessarily a Democrat. I'm not necessarily, I was never a Republican. I was a Democrat for a little bit, but I tell you at this moment, I can't put myself behind anybody right now. So how it's all going to unfold, I believe, is how willing people are to learn and to come together, I believe.
And just work locally and work on down ballots, Mary. Work in your area. That's always a good creed, you know, 50 miles within you, eat within 50 miles, 10 miles. So doing down ballots and getting really supporting women, progressive women candidates is a great thing if we can do that. Because as it stands right now, we are ruled by the rule of law, by what they decide in Washington. So the more advocates that we can get in office, like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, for instance, the better. That's a wonderful way to be active. If you can't get out on the streets yourself, you know, support causes that are out there working for people of color. Definitely right now, support all Black Lives Matter fundraisers that are going on. People are really needing to amplify voices. And as you said, for all of us to come together.
Yes, and I think discernment is needed right now to check out what exactly are we supporting. So where I was trying to go early on about sadly that word spell is misunderstood. What I'm talking about that is that we need to really check out what it is we're saying, stop and think. And when Fran talks about doing things locally, that's about really all we can do, because otherwise it's almost like deer in the headlights. What in the world do we do when we, unfortunately, sadly, please don't watch TV, kids, but what I'm saying is when we do, or we're watching Facebook or one of the social medias, we get overwhelmed, because if we think, how can we make a difference? There are so many things we can make a difference in right around our own self. And that's a ripple effect. Once we start, and so I went on your Facebook page and I took the test, the racism scale test.
Well, you took the test. Good for you.
I did.
Thank you.
I want to check myself. I mean, everybody ought to be checking themselves, you know. And I was over in understanding there is systemic racism, and I do understand that. But I'm going to keep checking myself, because we didn't get here in a day, for goodness sakes. And so, okay, so we at this moment do not have questions. What that means?
Questions.
The reason why is that people are very interested in what it is you have to say. So they're not coming up with questions. So I've lost you. So can you jiggle something around there? I've lost your picture.
Oh, okay. Let me jiggle around. So sorry, Mary.
That's okay.
I'm going to get back on. I was actually looking something up that I wanted to take a screenshot of. I know you did that one. Check yourself. There was another.
So while you're doing that, I will talk about something. Okay, so in our area in University, there is a missing young man, 14 years old. So everybody who's out there, there's quite a few of us on now. Please pray for Manuel Ramrez. He's 14, as I said. He went missing over a week ago. I think, well, almost 2 weeks now. He is still not found as of a couple hours ago. So please look up his picture so that you can start looking for him. We don't know if he's around in this area. We want to be really supportive of his family now. And I'm hoping that someday he's going to be on local news. So if anybody knows anybody from local news, ask them to look for Manuel, because what's going on now in his family and people who care about him putting up posters, absolutely. So please to pray for Manuel Ramrez, 14 years old, University Place, Washington. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. I saw that post.
Yes,
Thank you so much. Yeah, I appreciate that.
I keep putting him out because I'm hoping that he's going to get found or he comes home.
Yeah. So one of the other things that came to me that I wanted to say was that people, depending on where they are, you know, you're in Washington State. You've got a really good ally in Pramila Jayapal, because one of my other areas of activism has been for immigrant rights. And Pramila Jayapal, she started the whole Keep Your Families Together. So just to let your public officials know that you're concerned about certain issues, they tally phone calls. I learned this from a really good friend of mine, Deborah Parker, who was very close to Bernie for a while. And she would spend a lot of time on the Hill. And when you call in to your representatives, whether they're congressmen or senators, they're by law, they have to tally those phone calls for and against. So that makes a big difference. And it's just a phone call. You can do it from the comfort of your home if you feel like being an advocate for a certain cause or for someone, or if you see someone being mistreated, call that police department, call the mayor, call the governor, make your voice heard. One of the campaigns that I came onto a little bit late, but I really went full force when I learned about it through my daughter, was Rodney Reed, a man here in Texas who was accused of murder. And the murderer in prison, who was the white policeman who was the boyfriend of the young woman that he was having an affair with, had admitted to the murder. And there's so much more DNA evidence and on and on. So enough people called and made a noise that at the 11th hour, they turned back his execution date. And there's so much we can do, It's a full-time job if you're up to it.
If people have not written a letter or called people, oh my goodness, it works like crazy. I've written so many letters and called, and really just saying, have you thought of this, and just be kind, write the letter in a kind tone and just say, I don't stand up for this and wondering why you are, however you want to put it. But yes, these are the small changes that we can make if we are not to go out with a sign or.
Right. If you're not up to going out just yet. But I don't want to discourage people from doing that. I mean, right now we're in shelter in place. And of course, I think we're all taking a step back, and I've taken a step back from getting into large crowds because I'm over 60. But I think that will wane, and that we will be able to find ways to once again gather in crowds. And just know that peaceful protesting, if you keep your wits about you and your crowd, it's wonderfully empowering to get out in a march. And the minute you start to feel a little uneasy, well then you can retreat. Most police, and this has been my experience across board, they are required to give you 3 warnings. A warning about this, and before you're arrested, or before you're sprayed, or before you're hurt. We haven't been seeing that in the videos where people just are spraying indiscriminately at folks. That's not normal behavior. That needs to be called out.
Yeah. Okay.
So, and one of the other things I'd like to bring up very much is I received a really great lesson when I was at a training in Washington, D.C. for climate action. And at the end of the training, a young woman raised her hand and said, I'd like to know, she was a woman of color, I'd like to know that the people of color here have my back tomorrow. And for some reason, the facilitator passed over her question and didn't address it. And she went outside, and I went out to talk to her about that and said, listen, I heard you, and I had my hand up trying to ask him to address this, but he didn't, the man who was leading this. So I started talking to her about it. He came out and we addressed it with him. This is something that a lot of people don't understand, that when you're marching on the streets, if you're a person of color, you're going to be targeted. And it sounds paranoid to say that, but it's absolutely the truth. And I hope that people are becoming more aware that people of color are also targeted by the police. So if you are white presenting, or if you're a white person and you're in the street, you need to really step up and be an ally and accomplice to those people who are about to be targeted. And when you see it happening, in the words of one of my great teachers, my Lakota teacher, Cheryl, when you see it happening, because you're already primed, you know that the person of color is going to be the asset that will be targeted. Mm-hmm. You call it out. You step in to stop it. You also call it out loudly as being racist. And you say, why is this happening to this person? Why is this happening? And you be a voice, okay? And you step up. And a second part to that is, at a march where I was in the Capitol this last week, we were marching around the Capitol for George Floyd, and some kid in the crowd threw a water bottle at a line of police that were standing nearby. And immediately a Latinx woman next to me turned to him and said, how dare you do that? You're going to put all the rest of us at danger. They'll target me. So this is something to really be aware of before you do something radical or edgy. Look around, see who's around you, and make sure that someone else isn't going to be hurt because of your foolhardy reactions. Stay peaceful, as best you can.
Okay, thank you. So I know that you were part of a procession for the funeral for George
Floyd. Yeah, I wanted to actually get the painting of the young Appalachian girl. We have a painting that we were going to hand to the Floyd family. And then at the very last, extra security was beefed up, and we were in the second ring. We were to be with the Latinx version of the NAACP, LULAC. We were to be in the second ring and to be there with some of the folks at the funeral, but we had to be we had to just go to the cemetery at the end of it. So that's what we did. We waited at the cemetery for his horse cart to come by, for his horse carriage, and the band and the long number of people. Shall I get the painting? I'll have to move, Mary.
That's fine. I can say something while you go.
Okay, I'll go get the painting. I'd love you to see it.
I saw it on your Facebook page. It was great.
See it.
That group she's talking about, LULAC. Everybody look that up. So I hope everybody was able to watch a few days back George Floyd's funeral, where Reverend Al Sharpton spoke. I was able to see about half of that. It was the tail end of it, but he stopped for over 8 minutes, and we all prayed together. It was beautiful.
Here it is, Mary. I don't know if you can see. Can you see that?
Yes.
Yeah, this is by Rowan, who is from Appalachia. And I'm very blessed to be having her painting just now. And we are actually going to be sending it to the family because we weren't able to meet with them in Houston. So,
thank you. Very good. Yes, I saw there's been a couple of examples of art people have been making. I mean, people feel like they have to do something, you know?
Yeah, a gift from the heart. She's a young professional. She just wanted, she wrote a letter to the family as well. So it's beautiful, you know, and it's beautiful. So we're gonna put in the links some good fundraisers that I found for people who would just like to support the cause. Bail bond funds are also wonderful. My daughter, who has been working with the public as she is a manager in a restaurant, felt it wasn't responsible for her to go out and be with crowds. So she's been donating to bail funds. So that's something you can do, help people get out of jail. Yes. If you support nonviolent civil disobedience, if you support standing up.
Yes, we will be sharing all kinds of links. And one of the things I love about this podcast is people just pop on and share stuff while we're doing it. And I love that. So people have been doing that. And we just want to say there's about 16 people right here, but I know there's other platforms just on my Facebook page, which is where I take a look to see questions. And I just want to say hi to Uncle Wyatt. Uncle Wyatt's on, and Lynn and Jeannie, Christy, Aaron, Sherry, Samantha. There's Samantha. All right. And Colleen. I'm just going to say hi to Colleen and send her a lot of love. And then Sovereign Sisters. So I can't pronounce that person's name. D.L. Hamilton is sharing that.
Hi, D.L. She's a friend of mine.
Oh, very good. And there's my girl Bree and Sherry, Belladonna, Tanya, Tort, saying hi, sending love to everybody. Sway, Ingy, Sharon, Tracy. So lots and lots of folks. There's Marcia. There's Tom Beckman. He's allegedly watching. Watches everyone just to make sure that I'm okay, that we're not having any problems. And so Fran mentioned the Lakota teacher Cheryl Angel. So here's her Facebook page. Okay.
So, yes. Sacred activism.
Yes, absolutely. And so we'll have a lot of stuff that I will share out on my Facebook page after we get done with Miss Fran, so that all the stuff she's talking about, you guys don't have to worry about figuring it out. It'll all be there, which is, I really, really, really appreciate that. But I just like to back up for a second. I'm all about the backup, just because I want to make sure I ask the questions. So there was a threat at that funeral, correct?
We won't make that public. We'll just say that there was possibly beefed up security.
Beefed up?
So, yeah.
Okay. All right.
Possibly the security was beefed up, and it was beautiful how everything went so smoothly. And I was in tears. I was listening to you know, if you haven't heard it, it's really worth listening to all the different speeches and all the different voices. And they preach to us, and they taught us that day, all the different voices that were there. So we were listening to it live as we were driving into Houston.
Okay.
And then we went and camped ourselves at the Pearland Cemetery, with just, the streets were lined with people, pretty much all the way probably from the church. And he's definitely a catalyst for these times. And he's definitely waking up a large sector of the population that felt that things were, you know, evening out, and maybe not so rough, but we're
it's everybody's waking up. Those of us who are sitting at home, I mean, it happened during this time. I believe it's all karma, you know, that it's opening up a time where here we are and we can see more. We can see what's really there.
Right. And then it's up to us to, as I said, when you asked me about the karma yoga, it's up to us to take our knowing, what we've all been training, because I know that many of your listeners are prayerful people who have many different practices. Mine are eclectic. You know, I was raised Catholic, but really I was raised in countries that were Buddhist. So I very much followed the Buddhist philosophy of nonviolence and prayer and action. Then learned so much while I was at Standing Rock, and then from my teachers, many different teachers, many different paths, Guatemalan teachers, Balinese, many from many different indigenous cultures, the Lakota, Guatemala, and Bali. So I have a great respect for indigenous teachings.
Absolutely. Yes. And so what I love about you, though, is when I watch you on your Facebook page, you are in hallways and in people's offices and buttonholing people all over the place with all kinds of different signs. Can you talk about some of what you've seen in Washington, D.C.?
Sure. Yeah, that's something else I've learned through a nonprofit that I volunteer for, Center for Popular Democracy. And they have really spearheaded the art of bird dogging. In fact, they're coming out with a new film. But bird dogging takes, you know, they take that vision of the hunter who is catching the poor little bird in the tree, where we're doing that to politicians. And it was extremely powerful to do this on the campaign trail, because people who are running for office are wanting to meet you. So there's a famous meme where I met Biden, you know, and I asked him the question that started off triggering him, and then my girlfriend asked him a further question. He got very triggered. I asked him about Anita Hill, and if he becomes president, if he would consider term limits for both state and federal courts, because right now our courts are packed with some extremely conservative judges, and so we have a concern for a number of our rights under these judges. So we were asking him that question, and I mentioned Anita Hill, which of course triggered him. And then the girlfriend next to me said, "You flipped on the Hyde Amendment. We need you to protect women." And then he just got completely furious at us. So that was interesting. We met Biden. I've met, I met most of the candidates to different degrees. And the way you can do it is you can either go to their fundraisers and then get in the selfie line and then just really have your questions ready. People in the selfie line will pretty much tell you anything. It's when you can catch them cold in the hallways or just out and about, when you ask them a pointed question, and then you have an accomplice who's filming, and you get them on camera to promise certain things. And we tried this with Pete Buttigieg in New Hampshire. I asked him a pointed question about the pipelines, because at that time it was looking like he was possible nominee, and we asked him a question about would he hold oil companies legally responsible, financially legally responsible for damage that they reap. And he answered us in platitudes. You know, you're hoping that you're going to get someone who's going to answer you, and then later on you can come back and say, "Hey, look, this is what you said. You don't want to go back from what you've said," and you make it a platform. And when you have a number of you doing that, it can be effective. I'm not sure how effective it is, but it's satisfying. I'll say that. It's quite extremely satisfying to jump in front of someone who's about to make some crazy law and tell them how you feel, because they won't meet with you in person. They won't the ordinary channels are closed off to you.
Right. We have to create an extraordinary channel to talk with them. That's why higher self works so well right now.
Yeah. I had a really good time when I was actually campaigning for Bernie in San Antonio, and that night Bloomberg was coming in for some huge party that everyone was invited to. So we went, a group of us went, and he got on stage for a very short period of time and spoke and jumped down. And I got him in the line coming down, and I asked him about the term limits, and he said he'd get back to me on it. And then we went around outside to try to see what we could see. And actually his local campaign manager was saying goodbye to him in a limo and started walking towards us. So I started walking with her, and I started asking her questions about what did she think about stop and frisk in her community, and what does she think about supporting something like that. So it's just, you have to have a certain amount of what is it we say in Indonesia, berani. You have to be really like, you have to have that tough part inside of you, because you're asking people tough questions. But if you can do it in a very polite way and stay civil, I've spoken to a number of times our senator here from Texas, and I've managed not to lose it when I've spoken to him, even though I would like to shake him.
Yes.
But if you can just maintain civility, because everything starts with conversation, of course, right, Mary?
Yes. Gosh, yeah. Well, even in just, from books I've written or interviews I've done, or just this podcast where I've talked to lots of amazing people, even if people are famous or infamous, if you're very kind, they will answer. I tell you, I've had people write to me, talk to me that I'm just some little person from Tacoma, Washington. You go in there kindly, you ask some questions, and you're prepared, just like you said. So I went to a Bernie rally years ago with my husband, and we made friends with about 9 people. So it took forever and 8 days to get into the Tacoma Dome. And by the time we got in there, we were all buddies, and we all sat in the same row, and there was like one of every possibility, right? There was the gay person, and there was the partially gay person, and then there was the retired lady, and then, it was different colors, different backgrounds, different ages, all different in this row. And so I was just sitting there thinking, because that's the way my brain works. I thought, and then we had one person who wasn't going to vote for him.
Okay.
It was great. And so we kind of all stayed together. We were able to have all those hours to talk. And I mean, it was great. So the only thing I have to say about that is that since then, I've become a lot more disillusioned about politics, politicians.
I understand.
So right now, anybody who's listening, if you know a politician, now's the time for somebody to stand up and say something, because a lot of us are on the fence and absolutely disgusted. So if anybody can actually show their real colors and be honest and get some stuff done, I'd love to know about it. That's all.
Pramila Jayapal, in your region, Pramila Jayapal, she went to school with my brother. Okay. So we were in Indonesia. We were living in Jakarta, and she was at the American International School, Jakarta International School, where my brother was, which is neither here nor there. It's just interesting. But I've been following her, and she walks her talk.
Okay.
I would support her because of her activism for the people in detention there, the Pacific Northwest Detention Center, which is a horrible thing. That this whole issue of detaining people and immigration and what's going on, we all need to really, be a voice for the voices, be a voice for the people that are inside. Yeah. So that's one of my pet causes is immigrant rights, of course, indigenous rights, and then onto the prisoners' rights. What's going on in these privatized prisons are just awful. We need to shut that all down. And when I said earlier, I wanted to mention something, Mary, about defund the police. Yes, it is about taking money from the police and putting it towards social programs in our communities. I do not believe that if we abolish the police and we dismantle the police, that tomorrow morning at 7 o'clock in the morning, oh my God, no, communities are going to be working in a process. But if you look at the history of policing, it starts on the plantation. So it started in an atmosphere of slavery and oppression and killing. So there's really no good coming from it. Plus the Klan has more or less infiltrated all levels of enforcement. So we really, as society, need to step back and look at what we are funding and look at how we can have some kind of order without having police forces. So I just would like to say that. But it's not something that's going to happen overnight. So people need not to be scared when they see the word defund. They just need to start envisioning some different ways of being that we can be.
Well, absolutely. I mean, look at my old hometown, Seattle, Washington.
What's going on there?
What's that?
Have some heavy duty things going on in Seattle.
Absolutely.
Right?
There's a lot of need there. There's a lot of need for healthcare, mental health care, all kinds of stuff. It's not going to just be one thing. It's going to be a lot of things that are going to help people. Basically, I just want to ask, this was one of my questions here, which is about the camps. I know that there's a place in Tacoma where families are being sent. A detention place in Tacoma?
I know about Pacific Northwest Detention Center. They're right in Seattle because I have good friends who go there regularly.
Okay.
And Maura is an amazing activist. Maura, to follow her. So she's helping people in detention. Whether they have families in there or not, I'm not sure. Okay. I just did go to a detention center here in Texas that the average age was 4 years old. So they're in there with families. Right now, the administration is giving families a choice to be detained indefinitely or to be separated from their children, and then they send their children off somewhere. There are many missing children. One of the things we haven't talked about, of course, is the trafficked children. So that is a whole nother topic, maybe for another time, but it's something that is pretty much swept under the rug. It's highly profitable. People are extremely powerful. It's very scary for people to talk about, but it's something that we need to talk about. And it's one of the reasons I really honor candidate Castro, because when I met him, after I asked the question that I had gone there to ask him for our group, I asked him a personal question about what was he doing for trafficked children along the border. He said, oh, he's very concerned about it, and he means to speak up about it more. And then I asked his aide, who was a friend of a friend from San Antonio, and she said this is one of his pet causes. So I would just like to make a mention for that, of all the missing children that were detained, and then the children that are just going missing constantly on both sides of the border, everywhere.
That subject is in the back of my mind to do a few podcasts about. I have a few different people to ask to come on, and I hope that you might be one of them in the future to talk about that. So I think it's important to just at least talk about it, get it in people's minds so that we can hopefully someone's listening that can do something.
Yes, well, and we have many in the indigenous in the indigenous community. We have many experts on missing and murdered indigenous women, children, and people, which would be a great podcast for you.
Yes, yeah, it's one of them in my mind. Okay, do you have anything that you would like to say to wind up? And I also would love to ask you to let people know how they can get a hold of you and ask you something they want to in the future.
Sure. The best way is on Facebook. That's the best. I don't have a website, and I'm really awful with email. I miss half my emails. Mm-hmm. So just Fran Tatu, just where I am right here. Okay. And keep up the good fight. Thanks for anyone who's joined us, who is interested in taking their prayers and their light work to the next level, and actually getting out there and affecting change for our communities of color, because that's where we are right now. And that's where we've been for 500 years. You know, the country was founded, this democracy was founded on genocide and slavery. So it's a reckoning now. It's a reckoning. And look around in your areas. Here we have something called Undoing Racism. And I know that friends of mine in New Orleans have a group called European Dissent, very clever. It's DISSENT. So there are groups that are all across the country helping people to come to reckoning for their own privilege and fragility, and unlearning some things that they can have helped learn. And Why Fragility is a good book, is one of the good books. And we'll put some more things in the feed if people are interested. Okay. But thanks everyone for just joining in, and it's good to take, when you're out there, the last thing I want to say, it's good to take all the precautions, but just to really know that I don't feel that we're walking alone. You know, we're coming in with so many guides and angels and protectors and ancestors with us, and call on those to guide you and help you with your intuition, so you're in the right place at the right time, so you can stay safe. Stay safe out there is the main thing, everyone. Stay safe.
Absolutely. And please, everybody, don't be afraid to ask questions, because how else are we going to know? How are we going to know how we got into this, and how we might not understand each other, which is like that's a tiny little way of putting it. Ask questions, everybody. Well, thank you so much, Fran. You are just beautiful in person, just as I thought you would be. And thanks everybody for tuning in.
Thanks,
and
everyone.
we will get that information out. Our YouTube video of this will all be together in a few hours. And so that's where we will be sharing everything. Also, if you want to share anything in this feed, we can. So bless you. And thank you so very, very much for today.